Well, good evening, everybody. March 6th, Sunday evening, and I heard rumor that Amy is making her venison spaghetti tonight. So I thought we better capture this. So here is a how-to spaghetti with venison. Here we go.
So we are going to make venison spaghetti. And again, this is just a very simple recipe. I want it to be for anyone who is a beginner or anything, that they can just easily make this for their family. So we're not being fancy, we're not in a competition, we're not on a cooking show, just feeding our family. So I'm gonna just start from the very beginning for anybody who's a novice, which is totally fine because I didn't grow up in a hunting family, and so it took me some time, but after 25 years or so, I think I'm finally getting the hang of it. So to thaw out your venison, I usually try, if I remember, to take a pack out and put it in cool water in the morning. Don't do this overnight, but just for a few hours, it's totally fine. Like every hour or so, you're gonna want to just change out the water to cool water. You don't want it to be warm water because it can cause a little bit of bacteria to grow in there. I'm not super worried about it, but overall, you want to just keep it in cool water. Okay, so I am going to preheat my pan here at about medium, so like medium low, so like between the 3 and the 4. And I'm going to add a little olive oil. And again, this is just my preference. You definitely don't have to do this. It just I think it makes the meat just a little bit tastier. So just a tiny bit, like a tablespoon. And then my old trusty garlic and onion salt. And if you don't know how much I love this, you can watch it on the last video, how much I love this, locally made in Michigan. Just add a little bit of that. And again, that's optional. You don't have to do that at all. But adding garlic, onion, and salt are the ways that you can get kind of that gamey taste out if you're like me and you didn't grow up in a hunting family. Okay, so we have this preheated just for a couple minutes, and then I'm just going to take my 1 pound of ground venison and I'm just going to add it to the pan. I'm going to take my little meat chopper, and I'm just going to brown the venison. And then while it's cooking, I just add a little bit more of the garlic and onion. Then I add a little bit of salt. Something you can make ahead as well. The sauce, it's just really basic spaghetti sauce. So, but the sauce gets more and more tasty as time goes on. So it's something you could do the day before and save. You can even freeze it if you're really into it. One thing with venison is it's very lean, so unlike ground beef, like if this were beef, I could just let it sit for a couple minutes and probably maybe even go do something. You have to kind of babysit this all the time because it will brown really fast, and there's not a lot of fat, so. You could also do this with half like venison sausage, like ground sausage, and half the ground venison. Or you could do however you like your spaghetti sauce. But this is just the basic part, and you can get all fancy if you want to. If you were starting, if you wanted to add fresh onion to this, you would just do what we did, we started with the olive oil, And then you would just put the diced onions in there on a low temperature for maybe like, I don't know, 5 minutes or so, and then they'll get nice and soft, and then you can add your meat. Okay. I'm gonna turn on my warm water so I can drain the fat. And if you don't know my pro tip, you'll have to watch my sloppy doughs video. And that will show you the pro tip, okay? All right, now I'm just gonna add a little bit of this Italian seasoning, which you can get at Gordon's. It's the best for everything. So this is just to kind of doctor up the canned sauce that we're using. So just a little bit, like, I don't know, a tablespoon or two. Just mix that in. And then we're just gonna add, this is what I happen to have in the house, is the traditional Prego sauce. Prego is my favorite, personally, if I'm going to use it out of a jar. Just FYI, I do know how to make my own, and sometimes we do, and all that. I know how to can my own, but this is just fine. If this is what you want to do, this is what you have in the house, it's quick and it's easy, and it plays the part. So we're just gonna add the sauce. And I like to add just maybe just a little bit of water, like that, like maybe a couple tablespoons, to just kind of get all the sauce out. And that water will just absorb anyway into the meat, so. Okay, there's that. And then we put that back on medium heat. And if you turn it too high, it's gonna splatter everywhere. So it might splatter everywhere anyway, but the lower you put the heat, the less chance you have of it absolutely splattering everywhere. Okay, so we're just going to let that simmer for as long as you'd like. So I'm just gonna put it down to simmer. You can cover it if you want, or keep it uncovered. I'm gonna just keep it uncovered. And then we fill up our bigger pan. If you don't have a Dutch oven type pan, you can just use just whatever you have. You can use. The more room you give the pasta, the better it cooks though. So it's nice to, if you can, use the Dutch oven type thing. Even if you're just making, I'm just making pasta for 3 of us. So I'm gonna do about 7 or 8 cups of water. Yeah, but a lot of times, I mean, when it's boiling, it'll boil off some of the water. So you want a little bit more than covering the pasta. And I am going to change burners here. So I'm going to move this to the back burner. Put it on simmer. Because this is my big burner. It's my quick boil, so I've just put that on high. And then to make it boil faster, I just put a little bit of salt in there. Some people like to put about a tablespoon of white sugar in there, and that kind of makes the pasta a little bit sweeter, but we're not gonna do that. But you can if you'd like. That's a little pro tip that we're not using. And then I will just prepare the pasta by opening the box. And again, if you want to home make your pasta, that's great. You should. But I don't want to do that. So, and I can't even say I can because I never have, but I'm sure I could. But this is fine. If you want to just use pasta from a box, that is perfectly fine. We're just trying to feed our families, right? So like I said, I'm only making pasta for 3 people, so a half a pound or so. And I'm gonna try to get some in the pot. That would be good. So we'll wait for our water to boil. We can make our garlic bread, which again, if you wanna just buy store-bought garlic bread, that's fine. Just don't put any pressure on yourself, especially if you're just starting out or if money's tight or whatever it is. My best advice is just get in there and do it. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be organic. It doesn't have to be anything. We're just trying to feed our families. So I'm gonna just make what we call poor man's garlic bread. I personally think it's way better than store-bought. It's literally white bread, melted butter, and the oh so famous onion and garlic powder. Or if you don't have this, you can just use garlic salt, or you can use garlic powder. Garlic salt is a little bit more, it's a little bit stronger. So if you have it, you can use it. So I'm just gonna take probably, I don't know, like a half a stick of butter, kind of quartered up. And then I'm gonna add the garlic salt right to it, probably like a tablespoon or so. And then I'm gonna put it in the microwave. If you don't want to use a microwave, you can always either put this on the stove top, just like in the middle there, or you can even put it in the oven if you want to melt it that way. Or you can melt it in a pan if you want. But I'm gonna just use the microwave. And I'm setting it for 1 minute on high, but we won't probably use it for that long. So you just gotta kind of watch it really close. Okay, and then I'm going to, so it's just soft, it's not all the way melted. And I'm just gonna kind of fold it in, so it's kind of, it doesn't really matter if it's fully melted, as long as it's soft enough that you can put it on the butter, I mean on the bread. I'm just going to use 3 slices of bread because I think we only have 2 bread eaters. This is actually even better if it's just at the end of its life, so if it's a tiny bit stale, it'll taste even better. So I'm just gonna slap the butter on there. Oh, I didn't probably need a half a stick for 3 slices, but you know. And then we're just gonna, if you don't have a little brush, just spread it on like you would with a knife, like you would if you were making toast.
I say just grab a paintbrush out of the ground.
Not recommended.
That's why we don't let Ben cook.
I mean, if it's clean, that's okay. You know what, I'm gonna just put it in my hand so that I can see how much I'm putting on. It's just kind of a pinch on each one. And then you will put that in the oven, probably like 375. And if you find your water's taking forever to boil, like perhaps you put too much in, like I do sometimes, just take a mug, clean mug, take the water, and you can just heat up some of the water, and that will let it boil a little faster, because sometimes I overestimate and it takes a long time. Okay, and then we just wait for the water to boil. And a little pro tip that I learned is it's easier to keep up than catch up. So while you're waiting for something, if you want to just kind of tidy your kitchen a little bit, then you won't feel overwhelmed with all these dishes and all these things. Or if you want to, you know, get the plates out and prepare things for the next steps, then you're not wasting any time in the kitchen and you won't feel so overwhelmed. Okay, so I'm gonna put these in the oven. Preheated the oven. I went ahead and cut them in half because they're easier to manage when they're half slices. So in the oven they go. And they'll be in there for, it's, 7 or 8 minutes. Okay, it looks like the pasta is ready to be put in. You do have to wait until it's at a full boil. before you put your pasta in. And I like to break it in half. I don't really know why, just because I always have. So you add your pasta. And then you just want to move it around a little bit so that it doesn't stick together. And then it says to cook for 7 to 8 minutes, and that is after the water starts boiling again. So you wait for the water to start boiling again. And again, if you realize that your pasta is all covered and you have quite a bit of extra water, and you kind of want to hurry things along, oh, this is already boiling again, but you can always just take out a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to set the timer. I'll set it for 7 minutes, and then we can check it. And you'll just want to every couple minutes. Just don't go far from it. You'll just kind of want to give it a good stir so it doesn't get all sticky together. Ask me how I know you shouldn't wander away from it.
I didn't want you to.
Let's just say experience. And then we'll give our sauce a stir. Just make sure that's doing good. Have this on low, just simmering. And if you find it starts getting too like brown around here, you can either add a little bit of water or you can just take it off the heat. Because as it simmers, you can see like all the moisture kind of evaporating, which does draw in the flavor, but it also can make it kind of dried out a little bit. If you can make macaroni and cheese, you can make this. It's very simple. I'm telling you every little step that I'm doing, but once you get into your groove, it just takes a few minutes. It takes about as long as macaroni and cheese. So, and it's about as complicated. So just give it a try, do your best, feed your family, try to have a good attitude, try to smile. Okay, so timer went off. We're gonna drain the pasta. Here's another pro tip. Before you drain the pasta, take your mug and take about a half a mug full of, without the noodles, of just the water. This is actually a Rachel Ray tip, and she's Italian, so she knows. So I'm going to save this water and I'm going to add it to my sauce, and that marries the pasta to the sauce. Okay? We'll do that in a minute. That's your fancy pro tip. And if you don't do that, it'll still taste good. So I'm just gonna pour this into a colander. And some people like to add olive oil to their pasta. I only add olive oil if I'm making a cold, like a pasta salad, because otherwise the sauce doesn't stick to it. So I like the pasta to be a little bit sticky so that it sticks to the sauce. Okay, so we're just gonna do that. Pour that back into the pan. And then the age-old question, do you put the pasta with the sauce or the sauce with the pasta? I put the pasta in the sauce, as long as I have a good ratio of pasta and sauce. To test the pasta to see if it's done, what Italian people do is they take it and stick it to their wall, but we're not gonna do that. You can pretty much know that it's done just by looking at it, and by feeling it. So it's just, it's pretty foolproof. Some people like it a little more al dente. Okay, so we're gonna take the water and we're just gonna add it to the sauce. And I'm gonna turn it on like medium, the heat on to medium. And I'm just gonna stir it in there. And that brings all the flavors from the pasta into the sauce. And again, if you don't do this, it'll still taste good. If you just dump the pasta in there, it'll still taste good. So don't get too hung up on the details. If you want to add more spices, go right ahead. Okay, and then once it starts kind of getting bubbly, I'm just going to turn it off actually. And then I just take my tongs and I just start adding in some pasta. And then I'm going to stir that in. We like a lot of sauce with our pasta, so I just want to make sure I have the right ratio of pasta and sauce. Just stir that all in there. And again, this is delicious the next day, probably up to 3 days in your fridge. So that's kind of all in there. And then I see I have lots of sauce left, so I'll do another big scoop. I'll do two scoops. And pasta is super, super, super inexpensive. So if you have a little extra pasta, you can probably feed it to the animals, the wild animals, not your pets. But the sauce, you don't want too much pasta in there, not enough sauce, because the sauce is kind of the expensive part. That's kind of the part that takes the most effort. And lots of sauce left. So I'll go ahead and add some pasta in here. Okay, and then I'll just add in that last little bit. I'm gonna check on my bread real quick. Looks really good. And if you cook on a baking stone, again, that's another pro tip. If you have one, they're wonderful, and they're very, very forgiving, so you won't burn it, you won't hurt it. If you don't have one, just put it on a cookie sheet. No big deal. If you're using a cookie sheet, you'll want to take it off right away so it doesn't burn on the bottom. If you're using a stone like this, you can just leave it on there if you want to. And I like to use tongs. You could use like a salad spoon and fork or whatever you want to use. Okay, so you just, and then I like to take a spoon, just kind of get a little bit more of the sauce in there. And some people make the pasta and just put the sauce on top. You can do that too. As long as it gets to the plate. If you want to grate up your own fresh Parmesan cheese, you just go right ahead and I'll think you're really cool and everything. Or you can just use the Meyer brand Parmesan cheese. And of course you can let your family put on their own Parmesan cheese. I just know Camp Benny and I know how much he likes. And there you have it. Ta-da!
Nice work.
Thank you.
Oh, this looks really good. Oh yeah. Nice. Thank you.
You're welcome.